and these are you do crash cart code ready defibs. The reason why I call them code ready is because the pads are hooked up all the time, 24/7, 365. When you get done with the patient, put it back in service, put new pads on, it's ready for the next patient. Also, if you notice across the front, we have a green. Green light shows it's plugged in, green light shows it's a full charge. The main thing we're looking at there, though, is that green check in that window. And what that tells me is that this device turned on last night by itself automatically about 2 a.m. and did this huge system check and everything passed. Anybody in here do crash cart checks? All right. I'll show you guys how to do those. Those became very, very easy now. I'm pretty sure you are going to go ahead and do a manual one every day. Just make sure in your department. But it has already done it for you. So if you come in, it's one of those mornings you just can't get to it immediately, just take a peek in that window. If you have a green check, you know that it is ready for you guys. All right? Pads stay hooked up all the time. When that 2 a.m. test is done, or when you do a manual crash cart check every day, you actually do your test shock right into the package now. You don't have to unhook the pads and plug into, so you have like a little shock block on the side of your thing now. You don't have to do that anymore. Also at 2 a.m. when it does that test shock, it also reads the expiration dates. So it does everything for you. So if you come in the morning and you do a manual test, or if you come in the morning and you need to clear a red X in this window means that something failed on the test last night. 99% of the time it's something we've done. We've left the pads unhooked so there's nothing to shock into, so it can't do a test shock. Or we left the device unplugged, and also if we did that, we would see no green light. So that's a real easy one to find, okay? So let's go ahead and act like we had either a fail or we had to do a daily check. If there's a red X, there'll also be an explanation in the window, and also a printable print telling what the failure was. So pads are hooked up, device is hooked up to the wall. Let's go ahead and do a daily check. We take our device, we go to red, we go to 1, that turns it on. I slide straight up here to the arrow down to 30. All tests are done at 30 joules. Then we slide up to our charge button. We go ahead and press that charge button at 30 joules. And when the alarm lights up on 3, we press the shock button, and you'll see on the screen it says 30 joule test done, 30 joule test okay. And that's how you do your daily testing. You may have noticed on there that it said all that, and also said defib pad short. Anybody see that on their screen? Mm-hmm. Usually that is a bad thing when you see electrical and short. In this case it's not. I'll show you where that is coming from. When these pads are closed, and they haven't been opened yet, they haven't been put on the patient, they're connected by a test strip. And then when we open the device, grab the red tab, pull it up to put it on the patient, this wire pulls out of the back, that's the test strip. Nothing's broke, everything's fine. That's how they talk and communicate inside the package when they're new and they haven't been opened yet. Other end of the wire is right there. So how you know it's a new set of pads that haven't been opened, it says defib pad short. They're shorted together by the test strip. As soon as we pull those loose, the device says, okay, now we're going on a patient. Now it's game time. Okay? When they're closed, sealed, all it will shock into them is the 30 joule test shock. Okay? Any questions on that? Turn it on, 30 joules, test and go. Pad placement, we'll go ahead and talk about that while we're at this point. We have an anterior, posterior pad placement. The pads have a little picture on them that shows that. Just kind of familiarize yourself before the code. It's always hard to read instructions or follow pictures or something during the code. Pad 1 goes on the back, we roll the patient, we go behind the heart with it. Pad number 2 goes on the front. We need to make sure that they're clean, dry. Super hairy, we've got to get it off. You do it however you want. It's not a day at the spa. You don't have to be gentle and pretty, but you've got to dry them up real quick. We want these pads to stick. We don't want any kind of air bubbles or hair or anything under them because that's what generates burns. If there's an air bubble or there's hair and the pad shocks, it arcs to try to make contact with the skin, which creates burns. So get them on good. We want that shock to drive into the heart and not out across the chest. Pad number 2, nice and clean. Nice and dry. This goes mid-sternum. We do CPR directly on top of this. So this goes mid-sternum. We roll it over, we smooth it out, and we do CPR directly on top of it. X marks the spot. That's where I do my compressions. This part of the pad right here shows my depth, shows my rate, and shows my quality of CPR that I press and I completely release. That's the key. We're really good at pressing hard. We're really good at doing fast compressions. But if we don't release, then the heart doesn't get filled back up with blood. So when we press down, we've got to come back up. let that heart fill, and then push again. There's a little device on here called the purple area shows all my quality of CPR. It will show when we turn these on, it'll show the depth and the rate and all that kind of stuff, and we'll go into that. So go ahead and turn all your devices back off now. What we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to disconnect these pads. This is about the trickiest part of the class. Once you get this down pat, the rest is easy. If you take a look at these pads, on top of this plug on this end that goes out towards the package, there's a little lever right here. There's 4 lines. When you press your thumb on those 4 lines, you can feel that little piece pivot. It pivots and releases a pin. Grab the plug in each hand, get them in here where you're strong, and give them a good pull apart. They're a little bit snug, so don't be afraid to go ahead and pull on them. Make sure you're pushing on the 4 lines. That releases the pin, and then they come apart. They're made by design to stay together. You imagine the chaos if you tripped over that during a code and unplugged the patient. So once you get comfortable with that, leave them apart the last time. Take the red end, which is coming from the defib, and go ahead and plug into your mannequin. All the little plugs I laid right across the stomach of your mannequin or somewhere close by. So plug into the mannequins. Right in front of them. There you go. Good. Yes?
We're having trouble getting our...
Let me help you. It is the hardest part of the class. I was not joking. What we do is make sure you're pressing here, and that releases that little pin, and then just grab it
together for nothing. I can take it.
If you're really getting a bind and can't do it, you can always do this. Teammate, grab that
I'm like, what?
for me. You can always tag team if you need to. Okay, so let's go ahead and plug into this now. Cool. It is definitely a hard plug, okay? Everybody else good with it? Good at all? Okay. Like I said, that's the hardest part of the class. From there, it's all easy. Nice thing is you don't have to do that during a code because you remember the pads are always hooked up. We just open the pads, grab the red tabs, pull them out of the package, put them on the patient, and we do CPR. Okay? Everybody feel comfortable with the pad placement. Leave your devices off for a second if you would. I'm going to get a little code started here to show you how we would start a code, and then we'll turn yours on and you guys can push buttons and do some CPR and really learn your devices. Patient goes down, we're doing CPR, crash cart gets there, we open those pads. We put pad number 1 on the back, we continue doing compressions, we pull pad number 2 off, we stop, put it down right where the heel of my hand's been going, roll it over, smooth it out, make sure it's on there good, and then do CPR directly on top of it. So we've done 2 steps, step 1, step 2. Now if you look at the front of these devices, in this class we're going to work in the red. The red is always your heart attack, cardiac arrest, that's where your shocks are delivered. We're not pacing, I'm going to cover up my pacer. We're not monitoring necessarily, so I'm going to cover up those keys. These are the keys right here you use in code, so all of a sudden it's got a lot simpler when you look at that. Number 1, we turn the device to 1. I'll turn mine on. Leave yours off for just a second. I turn it to 1. It immediately has a rhythm shows up, and I immediately slide up to option number 2. For this class, we're going to press Analyze. What Analyze says is I'm asking the device, would you analyze this for me? As soon as I press that device, that Analyze button, this device takes over, and it is in charge of the code now.
Stand clear.
At that point, I can do as I'm told. I stand clear. It starts looking for the rhythm. It decides if it's shockable. It charges if it is. It goes forwards from there. Okay?
Stand clear.
I didn't get mine plugged in good, of course. It tells me if it's shockable.
Shock.
It charges, talks me through it. I press number 3, which is my shock key, and it tells me to do
Perform
CPR.
CPR.
So at that point, I do CPR. So what I've done is I put 2 pads on, I turned it to 1, pressed option 2 that says Analyze, and then it's all up to it now. I start doing CPR. If you look in this purple area, that information that comes across is coming from underneath my hands. American Heart Association says 2 to 2.4 inches deep. That's the first set of numbers. 100 to 120. That's the second set of numbers. Recoil, right here, that's the biggest one. That bar that says release shows that I am pressing and releasing. If I press, I have to release to let that heart fill up. Ultimately, I fill up the diamond in about 15 good compressions. Represents coronary perfusion pressure, represents blood pressure. It's pushing blood through the body. we're doing as good as we can.
Push harder.
If I start getting out of range, he starts complaining at me, and it starts highlighting in yellow. So I know that I need to do some changes.
Push harder.
I get back in those
Good compression.
numbers, he's happy, yellow goes away, and we're moving on. The ranges are 2 to 2.4, 100 to 120. If you're at 2.5, it's going to highlight yellow. Don't get too worried about that. If you see yellow and you look up there and you're pressing 5 inches deep, then yeah, come way back off the chest. If we crush the sternum, it doesn't recoil. 2 to 2.4 is deep enough. 100 to 120, good release. When I stop doing CPR, that little clock starts counting. What that is it's how long it's been since I've done my last compression. So we know from our BLS classes, 10 seconds. We need to switch quickly. Since I did my last compression, it's already been 40 seconds. That time goes very, very quickly. Also down in this corner right here is a little clock that's counting down. As soon as I started the code, it started at 2 minutes. So in 2 minutes, it's going to tell me to press analyze again, and it'll start the next cycle. So in this mode,
Press analyze.
2 minutes are up. I would press analyze,
Stand clear.
and we'd go again. It keeps up with everything for us. First shock was 120 joules.
Press shock.
This shock, it automatically went up to 150. It automatically escalates for us too. When I shock at 150,
Perform
do
CPR.
CPR, the next one will be 200. It automatically escalates. It does everything for us. What we need to remember is pad 1, pad 2, turn it to 1, hit option 2 that says analyze. And we can run a code as good as anybody. I'm going to turn mine off, and if you guys will, let's take these sim boxes, let's turn them on. There's a little black and white button on top that says off and on. Turn those on, slide down the left-hand side, you'll see the second button down that says CPR with artifact. If you will press that, you'll see a little green light come on. Everybody see a green light on that second button down? Okay, so what we want to do is everyone feel comfortable with pad placement. Pad 1, pad 2, feel good with that. CPR would be in progress. Let's go ahead and go to our devices. Let's go to 1. Let's slide up to option number 2, press analyze, and do what it
Check
says.
pads. Stand clear.
Did you say check pads? Oh, I see.
Press shock. Press shock. Perform CPR. Perform CPR.
There we go.
Perform CPR.
Okay, now press analyze. Last class.
Stand clear.
We'll blame it on them.
Perfect.
Perform CPR. Push harder.
Attempt to get 2 to
Good
2.4,
compression.
100 to 120. Eliminate the yellow if possible.
Push harder. Good compression.
You can switch around. You don't have to do a full 2 minutes. Do whatever you'd like.
There's like literally nothing about this that's even remotely ideal.
Push harder. Push harder. Good compression. Push harder. Push harder.
Try to get rid of the yellow.
Push harder.
If your first set of numbers
Good
are 2
compression.
to 2.4, then the yellow goes
Push
away.
harder.
Your second set of numbers, get it between 100 and
Good
120, and that gets rid of the yellow as well.
How to get that one timing.
Try to keep it in that range.
Like a real trick.
Big thing is that release
Push
bar.
harder.
Make sure that release bar is filling up. That shows that you're compressing and completely releasing. You guys don't have to do any more if you don't want to. It's entirely up to you. Well,
Stand clear.
2 minutes are now up. You can just go ahead and turn them off if you want to. How do you guys feel about this? Feel pretty good with it? Okay. Good. I like that. I like to hear that. Just remember 2 pads, 2 moves, and then the device takes over. Tells you what you need to do. I'll show you a few more things on the device, then we'll get you guys out of here. We know we're always looking for green, green, green on the front, showing it's passed its test, it's plugged in, it's charged. Across the top, in the real world, there'll be paper printing out like this. I have everybody's taken out, so you can open it and look in there if you want to. This is what it's going to look like. The paper will be printing right out of the top. If and when that paper runs out, if you can notice in the bottom of yours is a picture of the pack of paper with the corner turned down and everything. It's exactly the way a package out of the pack looks, or out of the new package. You lay it in, pull it over the front, shut the lid on it, and it's printed. A lot easier than the device you have now. The one you have now, you have that little tray you pull out. This is much better than that one. Across the top, you have a battery as well. If you've been using it for a while and you want to know what your battery life is, notice when we start with a full charge, we have 4 hours. Press where the little finger's pointing, and it lights up, and it shows you how much battery life you have left. In a couple hours, it'll start counting down. The last 2 hours, you lose 1 green light every 30 minutes, and it counts you down. So you always at least know when you get into that last 2-hour range. In a hospital setting, you always plug it in. Now, if you're like a rural transport company, maybe a different case, but if you hook this up to a patient and you know you're going to monitor them throughout the night, go ahead and bring the cord with you and plug it in. A little quick connect is how you unhook it to start with. Okay. Down the back, too, you have your non-invasive blood pressure cuff. Up here on the front, you have your Stat BP, little cuff with the arm with the cuff on it. You have end-tidal CO2. I don't get into that with this class, but if somebody's saying, hey, can you hand me an end-tidal CO2 cable, this is what they're looking for. Respiratory, you guys will be using that. The code team will be hooking this up. I'll show you just a little bit more in a second. You have a SpO2, put it on their finger and go. Everything's zeroed, everything's calibrated, everything's ready to work. You have one more cable here with the screw in the top. That's the shocking cable, so we don't accidentally ever unplug that and it not be plugged in when we need it. We put a screw in the top of it where it's always there, because this thing always has to shock. We can't accidentally unplug something there. Any questions with this stuff? Feel pretty good with it? Okay. I'll show you just a little bit more on the end-tidal CO2. There's a fitting right here. This is the bag you're looking for. I'm assuming you guys will keep this in your airway box or your roll or wherever you guys keep your stuff, but this is the fitting you're looking for. This cable is absolutely positively not a throwaway cable. This piece here is. This fits all airways. If you're bagging with an ambu bag and a mask, it fits in there. If the patient's now intubated, it goes over the ET tube. If it doesn't fit, flip it over. There's no way to hook it up backwards. If it's backwards, it's like really, really obvious. If it snaps together, you're in good shape. Ambu bag fits, anesthesia bag, vent circuit, everything fits on top of it. Snaps on, and you get your readings in the yellow box. It says end-tidal CO2. Any questions?
Do you
Yes.
know when this is supposed to go live here?
Danita, do you know the live date?
They're going to deploy them Tuesday.
Okay.
Yep.
Soon. I finished training today, so they usually go very, very quickly. That way they're fresh on your mind. You see this, and then you'll see them next week. So you'll start being very used to that. You guys feel good with that? If you'll take and turn the SIM boxes off, make sure your device is turned off. And then if you want to unhook your patient one more time and hook your unopened pads back up, that's a good habit to always be in. Hook your unopened pads up, that way it's ready for the next class, it's ready for a code, it's ready for the test tonight.
There we go.
Always leave your device like this. All ready?
Yeah, it's okay.